Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to What the F Happened, our weekly market update live stream where we can talk about the news and policies and what's going on. And there's been a lot happening in the news. We have the debt ceiling agreement was technically reached over the weekend. The House still has to vote on it. We can talk a little bit about what that means and what's happening. A lot going on with the economy right now. The stock market seems to be still sticking around those 1-year highs right now, giving some people a little bit of comfort, but a lot boiling underneath the surface. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And Chris Naugle will be joining us as soon as his typical daily technical difficulties get ironed out and his computer gets updated and everything of that nature. Chris will be joining us here this morning shortly. So with that being said, let me play this quick little introduction video and we'll be right back to dig into all the news. All right. What's up, everybody? My name's Stephen Nagy, and I'll be joined by Chris Naugle here shortly as soon as all of the technical difficulties get ironed out and the computer gets updated and all the other normal, typical drama of technology and Chris Naugle. But we've come to expect that at this point, so it's all good. The show must go on. So thanks for being here this morning. Be sure to put any comments, anything that you want to discuss in the chat box, and we'll be sure to hit that. To kick things off this morning, I'm going to start with what's going on with the markets. So stocks fall first thing this morning as traders await debt ceiling progress in Washington. So we've got some live updates on what's been happening with the debt ceiling debate. So leading into this weekend, over the past 3 to 4 months, there's been a lot of talk about the United States defaulting on its national debt for the first time in history. What that means is basically we have a limit of how much debt we can take on, and the debt ceiling needs to be raised or else that debt defaults. We will no longer be able to pay on that debt. And so basically the Joe Biden, the president of the United States, for many months has said that he will not negotiate on the debt limit. He wants a clean debt limit raise without any other negotiations, changes to any of the spending bills or anything of that nature. And so the GOP, has been obviously fighting against that. That's what the two-party system does, is they try and hold each other responsible. So right now the United States House is controlled by the GOP. The Senate and presidency are controlled by the Democratic Party. So the House passed technically a Republican bill with some cuts and some limits to future spending and things of that nature. And Joe Biden said, listen, I am not interested in that. I want to, I'm not interested in negotiating or doing any of those changes. I just want to raise the debt limit. No questions asked. So it's been a back and forth, and the clock has been ticking every week, every day. And they were saying that by June 1st, if the debt limit was not raised, that we would see a possible default in this country any day. So over the weekend, the Senate and Joe Biden reached a deal. And I'll go through that a little bit here right now. And basically, it's now gone to the House, but it hasn't exactly passed yet. So there's still some uneasiness of what's going to happen. So what's going on here? Stocks fell Wednesday as investors kept an eye on the federal debt ceiling debate in Washington in the final trading days of May. The Dow Jones traded 132 points lower to open, about 0.4%. The S&P fell about 0.4%, and the NASDAQ dipped about 0.3%. So that's at open here Wednesday morning. President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy announced the deal over the weekend to cap federal baseline spending for 2 years and raise the debt ceiling, but the agreement has not yet been ratified. The deal cleared a major test Tuesday night after advancing to the House floor following a 7-6 vote in the House Rules Committee. The floor vote is expected to take place around 8:30 p.m. This evening Eastern time on Wednesday. I think we have the votes to pass this today, said Republican Patrick McHenry, a GOP negotiator on the debt deal, on CNBC's Squawk Box Wednesday morning. The moves come after a muted day of trading on Tuesday that saw the Dow shed 50 points while the NASDAQ rose 0.3%. For the month, the NASDAQ composite's up 6%. S&P, however, is only up about 0.5%, while the Dow has fallen 3.4%. The outperformance of the tech-heavy NASDAQ is due in large part to excitement around artificial intelligence, which has it's had a lot of major breakthroughs here recently in the AI space. And those breakthroughs briefly pushed NVIDIA's market cap above $1 trillion on Tuesday. I was texting Chris and talking last week. One day after hours, NVIDIA stock was up like 24% in after hours trading, which is mind-blowing rise. And a lot of that's just due to the chip manufacturing and how that's all tied to the breakthroughs in artificial intelligence. So really interesting to keep an eye on what's going on with AI. But back to the story. However, many on Wall Street are worried that the market strength has been too narrow. We're not seeing any signs of broad participation. We're not seeing signs of early cyclicals on top of AI, said Andrew Smith, chief investment strategist. So a little bit of what's going on this morning with the markets, keeping an eye on that debt ceiling vote in the House tonight. And then we'll take it from there when it comes to this debt ceiling, and we can dig into a little bit about that. But with that being said, it looks like Chris Naugle has gotten those gremlins out of his machine and is back live with us on What the F happened this morning. What's up, Chris?
Not much, man. I'll tell you, the movie Gremlins, I'd much rather the Gremlins than to deal with technology day in and day out with these computers, because I just don't get why nothing ever works. It's pretty interesting, but I'm excited. It's another week, another wealth webinar. And here we are talking about debt ceilings. We can talk about commercial real estate. Gosh, there's so much in the news to talk about, but I wanted to kick this off the right way and just welcome everybody from YouTube and Facebook, and we got TikTok going live, and we got Instagram live. It's a little kind of strange start to the morning because I know Stephen kicked it off, but Stephen, do you want to continue on the debt ceiling talk?
I kind of hit some of the basics of what's going on, and we can dig into your side with some of the other research. I mean, from a political standpoint, both sides are kind of claiming it as a win, as you would expect, just because of the fact that Biden for many months said, I will not negotiate no matter what. I want a clean passing of the debt limit no matter what. And that didn't happen. They did sit down. They did negotiate. However, on the Republican side, they're claiming a victory because of that negotiation. They got a few things put in there that they wanted, but the other half of the Republican Party says it's not enough. It's a garbage bill. So both sides are kind of playing it up that they won the battle, so to say. At the end of the day, it's kind of a moot point. We were never going to default here. The change and some of the negotiations that were put into this bill that they're voting on tonight, at the end of the day, aren't going to affect the economy, aren't going to affect your life very much. It doesn't really, there's no actual cuts. They're calling it cuts. It's just a limit to future increased spending. So not really cuts. It's just kind of that same old political nonsense speak that they do out of DC. And so take it for what it is. The markets are going to continue to do their thing no matter what. And that's what we'll dig into now, Chris.
It's just crazy. I mean, the whole thing, I was just reading in the white paper, the two sides call it a victory when they're within $100 billion and that's the mood point, right? The mood point is $100 billion differences in whatever each party wants. And, victory, no victory, everybody loses. I mean, they're setting arbitrary limits. That's all it is. Every time we seem to come up against this, especially right now where you got all this divide, you're coming up against something that's an arbitrary thing. I don't know. They were never going to default. All the talk that the media throws out there, they're going to default, but it does send Wall Street on a little bit of a roller coaster ride. It gets people emotional. And it was kind of funny. I was reading in this thing, it was a great idea. Why can't, they just come together and decide this when they decide everything else? It's always like, this is an outlier. Like, oh my God, we're going to we're going to default and everybody's going to get laid off. And it has happened in the past. We haven't defaulted, but we've, shut down until they could figure this out. It's just nonsense. That's all it is. It's just complete nonsense. The markets today are down 211 points, as traders await the House vote on the debt ceiling. I don't know. I hate to say it, but man, stuff is very broken right now. Very, very broken.
I agree. So something else I was reading out of the Wall Street Journal this morning. I found this a pretty interesting article. I'll just share it and kind of read through it for a moment here.
Wait, hold on. I got to call this one out. This just sums it all up. Always on TikTok, we've got Michael coming in. He says it's the Republicans' fault. There you have it, folks. It's just the Republicans' fault. Has nothing to do with the Democrats, has nothing to do with politics, has nothing to do with the fact that the system's broken. Michael, kudos, man. You nailed it, dude. It's just always the Republicans' fault. Unreal. Yeah, it's somebody else came in and said it's Michael's fault. Yeah, maybe it is Michael's fault. Michael, how dare you? How dare you create this kind of a problem for Wall Street and for everybody in this country? Shame on you. Shame on you, bad boy.
Got a lot of control, this Michael. Might want to bring him on the show, huh?
Yeah, I guess Michael knows all. Yeah, Michael knows all. Maybe we should have him as a guest on here just to tell us why it's the Republicans' fault. But I'm sure he will say the Democrats do nothing wrong. It's always one side or the other. How about it's both sides' problem, right? How about both of them are the problem? It's not one or the other. Stop watching CNN, dude. Stop watching CNN. It'll help you sleep better at night, Michael. I promise you.
And that's at the end of the day. I mean, that is the biggest problem. Is it is Americans' problem at the end of the day. Like we have no control over what these people are doing and passing and spending and all of this. Sure, vote, but without term limits, these people are in for life. Like we have senators that cannot even get out of bed in the morning, and they're still active senators in this country right now. And if they can't even get out of bed and think clearly, how are they making intelligent decisions on the future of our lives? Like it's such a broken system right now. And so, at the end of the day, all we can do is try and understand it the best we can and figure out ways to position ourselves to not be hurt by it and possibly take advantage of it. And that's exactly what we do. I mean, we have a money school 3-day training coming up this week. And that's what the entire thing is all about, is all of us make money. But at the end of the day, how do you keep more of that money you make? And how do you use that money to make more money? And that's what the 3-day boils down to. So if they're going to spend like there's no tomorrow and increase taxes because of that, well, guess what? The good news is the tax code book is like 20 billion pages thick. And what is in that tax code book? Little loopholes that allow us to pay less in taxes legally. So if it's there legally for us, why not take advantage of the mayhem? And at the end of the day, that's all we can do, unless you just don't care. And if you just don't care, then you're in the wrong place. But
I think everybody, and Stephen, I don't know if you can find it, but Chappelle did a cool little stint, very popular. It was sent to me not long ago. It was, Chappelle talking about, when there was that debate with Trump, and I think Hillary Clinton asked him, well, why haven't you paid your taxes? And then, goes on, but it's a good one. All of you should watch it. Not because it's Trump, not because it's Republican or Democrat, like our buddy Michael here wants to just point out that it's only one side's fault, but because he said something that I thought was pretty interesting that goes right along with that. When Hillary asked him, to pay his taxes, or when he was going to pay his taxes, sorry to clarify that. He said, when are you going to pay your taxes? Trump said, when they change the IRS code. And they're not. And then he goes on to say, they're not going to change the IRS code because people like you, Hillary, benefit from the code the way it's written, because it is written to benefit the wealthy. I know this to be fact. Why? Because there's two types of taxpayers, those that don't know and those that do. And all I mean by that is those that understand the tax code and how it's written. And I bet you, how many of you on here, specifically TikTok, because that's where all the smart people are this morning, clearly, how many of you know what a 1041 tax reporting is? How many of you know that? I bet you not many. Most people know what a 1040 is because it's right at the top of their tax return, but most don't understand a 1041 tax return. But the wealthy do. Their CPAs do. Their teams do. Some of you watching do. And if you do, then you'll understand why the wealthy don't pay as much in taxes. I'm not going to say the wealthy don't pay taxes. They clearly do. I mean, when Elon kind of went on, he certainly pays taxes. Trump certainly pays taxes. Hillary and the Clintons certainly pay taxes, but it's a fraction of what you pay. That's it. And we're not talking about the tax rate they pay. We're just talking about in relation to how much income they make, how much of that income do they actually pay taxes on. And if any of you can figure out that, then you'd be a lot smarter. You'd fully understand that the tax code 100% 1913 was written to benefit the wealthy, or as I like to say, not just the wealthy, but those in the know. Those that understand the tax code can benefit from it. Those that don't want to sit there and point fingers and blame everybody else because they've just conformed to somebody else's failed reality, and they just want to blame somebody because they don't want to learn that the truth is hidden right in the tax code. There's no cheating. I'm not going to say there's not people out there cheating, but there's clearly a path that the wealthy take using exactly what the tax code says that they can do that allows them to pay less in taxes. And for those that don't want to learn that, good. But just keep your mouth shut and don't blame or point fingers that somebody else is the problem. You're the problem because you don't know. Because you haven't taken the time to educate yourself. You haven't taken the time to just simply learn what's been in front of you since 1913. And that's all I have to say about that. There you go, Michael. 1041 is for trust. You're correct.
We can play this video if you want.
Yeah, I think you should, because and folks, before we play this video, because I'm sorry, there's some folks out there that just want to be treated gentle. I always ask, do you want me to be direct or do you want me to be gentle? And obviously, the people on TikTok just want to be gentle. So if we ever see them at a party and they got a bunch of spinach caught in their tooth, don't tell them about it because you'll hurt their feelings. This video is not about Trump or Republicans or Democrats. This video is simply making a point. So put aside your whatever you want to call it, your thoughts of politics and politicians and Trump, and just get through to what he is trying to really get down to the point of. And then you might actually learn something if you can just take the damn blinders off. So go ahead and roll it.
And then Hillary Clinton tried to punch him in the taxes. She said, this man doesn't pay his taxes. He shot right back. That makes me smart.
When he had to turn them over to state authorities when he was trying to get a casino license, and they showed he didn't pay any federal income tax. So
that makes
if
me
he's
smart.
paid zero.
And then he said, if you want me to pay my taxes, then change the tax code. But I know you won't, because your friends and your donors enjoy the same tax breaks that I do.
Secretary Clinton talks about people that didn't get paid. First of all, they did get paid a lot, but taking advantage of the laws of the nation. Now, if you want to change the laws, you've been there a long time, change the laws. But I take advantage of the laws of the nation.
And with that, my friends, the star was born.
I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes. When she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted, as soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns. And that's against my lawyers. They say, don't do it.
So it's negotiable?
It's not negotiable. No, let her release the email. Why did she delete 33,000?
Well, he also raised the issue of your emails. Do you want to respond to that?
I do. I made a mistake using a private email.
That's for sure.
And if I had to do it over again, I would obviously do it differently. But I'm not going to make any excuses. It was a mistake, and I take responsibility for that.
That was more than a mistake. That was done purposely. Okay, that was not a mistake. That was done purposely. When you have your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth, so they're not prosecuted. When you have the man that set up the illegal server taking the Fifth, I think it's disgraceful. And believe me, this country thinks it's disgraceful. It really thinks it's disgraceful also.
Can fact check him in real time. Last time at the first debate, we had millions of people fact checking. So I expect we'll have millions more fact checking because it's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
All right. It brings us brings us back to, I'm not really looking forward to 2024, but
I'm not looking forward to this election at all.
Oh,
I think it's going to be a
gosh.
disaster. If we don't, I don't know. If you listen to like Ray Dalio or anyone else, I think 2024 could probably lead to a civil war. It literally could. There's so much stuff out there, and I know a bunch of folks that just saw that clip. We probably played too much of it, or maybe picked the wrong clip, because the one that was actually on really just talked about like the tax code is written in a way that benefits the wealthy and those in the know. And all he was saying to her is, if you want me to pay my taxes, change the tax code. In other words, if you want me to pay more in taxes, then change the tax code. But you won't, because you and your friends are also using the same things I'm using. You notice how I didn't use names there, because then you fire somebody up. That's the truth of the matter. And it isn't Republican or Democrat, as Michael. It's just a broken system right now. It's a broken system. And it's not going to change. Why? Because the people with money, the wealthy, support the lobbies, support all of these politicians that are running. Where do you think they get their money to run? Where do you think they get the money for all those ads? That's right. Big pharma, big corporate, money. And who's benefiting from all this? Big corporate profits. That's it. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. We live in a capitalistic country. That's it. Capitalism is what this country was built on. And if you don't like it, get the F out. Seriously. That's the problem. I think we got a lot of people here that have just had it too good for too long, that just want handouts. What they need to do is just hop on a plane, go live somewhere else. Go to China. Okay? Go live in Russia. Go live in a communist country. And then see what that's like, and then see what you had here. Because you know what? We just got done with Memorial Day. And the one thing I want to do is I want to give a shout out to all our service men and women. I want to give a shout out to all our vets. Thank you for your service. Thank you for all that you do. But most importantly, Memorial Day isn't about those that are still living. Memorial Day is about those that sacrificed the ultimate sacrifice for your freedom, for my freedom, for Stephen's freedom, for Cashie's freedom. The ultimate sacrifice. Freedom isn't free. And anyone that doesn't understand that needs to get the fuck out. And I think, unfortunately, that's a big part of the problem in this country. We've had it too good for too long. And there's lots of books about it, like Hard Times Create Strong Men and Women. Let me just read that. Hard times create strong men and women. What have we been in? Easy times. Well, what does easy times do? Creates weak men and women. That's what it does. And there's plenty of books about it, and you can see it. Just shoot, walk around. If I were to kind of go on here and look at some of the TikTok comments, which you clearly can see that I'm ignoring them, because I just don't feel like going down that rabbit hole today. Some of you probably want me to argue with some of these idiots, that are making comments, but there are some good comments coming in. But I just don't have time for that. I really don't, and I don't want to. And that's the choice I have, is I don't have to. And that's the choice all of you have. You don't have to either. But just keep your mouth shut about your opinions, because you live in a country that allows us to be free, allows us to vote whatever way we want, allows us to bear arms. And those freedoms were not free. They came at the cost, the ultimate cost of too many people's lives. Many of you know some of them. So thank you to all of our service men and women for what you do.
Right. Sorry. A comment coming in off Facebook.
Oh, that's funny. Ray Ward. And weak men create husbands for liberal women. Oh, man.
So here's a really kind of just change the subject a little bit, but here's a really interesting chart that I found yesterday. And it just shows how big BlackRock and Vanguard have gotten over the last decade or so. And when you look into what BlackRock especially and Vanguard push and promote, you start to see a lot of what's happening right now. And a lot of companies are doing right now. And, the biggest examples of that would be what's gone on here recently with Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch, and Target, and some of the stuff that they've promoted through their marketing teams. And to watch the backlash against it has been very interesting to see, to the point where I didn't think that would be possible. But, I was looking up how Target and Anheuser-Busch have been doing since their respective marketing campaigns, pushing some of this, I don't even know what you call it, but it's pretty interesting. I'll just share a couple pictures. So this is Anheuser-Busch. Since the Bud Light controversy happened about 3-4 weeks ago, you can see their stock is just really plummeted. And then if we take a look at Target, which Target came out with in the last 2 to 3 weeks, they were in the news for having all kinds of transgender type stuff mixed into like the kid and teen departments through all these new pride displays and all of this. And it's interesting to see the reaction to people, because these companies are supposed to be, in it for their shareholders and for profits, and they're promoting things that clearly the American people don't agree with. I mean, just look
Wow,
at
I didn't know Target took that big of a drop.
130 something just in the last 2 weeks or so since all this came about. And so it makes you wonder, like, do they even care? I mean, when you have so much money being controlled by these big BlackRocks and Vanguards that are pushing this stuff, and that's who's funding these companies at the end of the day, they're the huge shareholders in these companies. Do they care? Do these companies care? Like, it's an interesting, back and forth we're seeing right now, and it's happening in real time. And I don't know where it goes, but it's something to keep an eye on. And when you couple that with, some of the different debt cycles, long-term and short-term, with the debt the country's in, I'll share this Wall Street Journal article in a second here, just talking about, where is the U.S. economy headed? Follow the money. It's really interesting to see what's going to play out. But watching these different scenarios right now, Chris, I don't see a world where this ends well for the average person. So it's just, to me, it's like right now it's so important to understand no matter what happens, it's going to happen. So how do you protect yourself from it? How do you take advantage of it? And how do you move forward in this new world right now?
I don't know. It's interesting, but we do have some interesting things coming in. Let's see.
Go ahead, and then I'm going to hit this article.
Yeah. Joe said, Michael, why are you still here? And that is always an interesting thing, when people come on to these shows and they don't like what the people are saying and they want to hate, like, why did they stick around? Well, I mean, I can take a couple guesses. I mean, they're probably unemployed, probably sitting in their tiny little 1-bedroom studio, not even a bedroom. It's probably they're sleeping on a, I don't even know, a floor, which, I feel bad for them if that's the case, but that's their choice because they want to just sit there and point blame like our buddy Michael. So why are they still here? Well, probably because they have nothing better to do than go on, throw around their hate because they're absolutely miserable with their own lives. And that's a sad state of affairs. It really is. And it's kind of funny. I just got back from Miami. I was speaking out there at a private hedge fund boot camp, and it was pretty interesting because a gentleman came on. His name was Gary, and he's into health. I mean, he came from the insurance world. He worked in the actuarial division, and he basically work to figure out like what makes people live longer and die earlier, right? Because if you're an actuary in an insurance company, a life insurance company, well, that's what your job is. Your job is to figure out like how long do people live, and an actuary can tell everyone on this live. They can tell you within a very close proximity when you're going to die. Now that's a scary thing, but what he went on to, he ended up leaving that world because he was threatened. His job was threatened because he found some things that were pretty interesting about health. And what he found was a lot of the problems that we have with mental health are not problems. They're not problems that existed 100 years ago. They're not problems that existed probably even 50 years ago. They're problems that existed when they started Monsanto and the companies that spray all the stuff on the food that we eat. They linked it directly back to that. And that's what he figured out. He said all these mental illnesses can be linked back to the source. And he then talked about, and it's way above my pay grade. Sorry, folks. I'm not knowledgeable. So just take this, with a grain of salt, but you can do your own work or your own research on it. But he showed how the things in these pesticides that they spray on all the food we all eat, including organic, these pesticides are directly linked back to all these mental illnesses, like to a T. And when he found this, he wanted to go public with it, and he wanted to explain it because he said, although people, are still living longer, the quality of their life, and many of you can agree to this, their quality of their life is not good. So we might be living longer because modern medicine and modern science and pharma, can keep us alive. But how many of you want to live a vegetable? Or how many of you want to live when you have no quality of life? Well, all these things can be traced back to that. And then he talked about the gut and all these things that, pharma does. And he did this unique study, and I can't remember exactly what it was. It was, I think, depression. Okay. And he linked depression back also to these pharmaceuticals, or these pesticides. But then he talked about like how they treat depression. Now, many of you on here probably know somebody who's been depressed. And when you're depressed, they give you a medicine. And he talked about how down to a cellular level, how the treatments, which are pharmaceutical drugs, keep people so that they're not feeling depressed, but it isn't fixing the problem at all. It literally keeps them in this state for 10, 20 years. And he said, and that doesn't need to be the case. And then he went and showed how depression is linked back to this and how you can actually detox that or fix that from a cellular level, and depression goes away. Like, that was pretty crazy for me to hear. Now, again, I'm not an expert. I probably will have him on my show eventually because I was so intrigued by it. But I guess it really kind of just made you really start to think, like, are a lot of the problems we face right now, yes, it's because of the food we eat, but also how we're treating them is not so much that we can't treat these illnesses and everything else, but it isn't fixing the problem. It's designed to keep you in that state so that you can't get off of the pharmaceutical drugs. So what does that do? Makes more profit for pharma. In my opinion, I think pharma should be a non-profit industry. I really do. I think it should be, because I think it would kind of flush out a lot of the I don't want to call it corporate greed because that's just a bad word to use these days, but you get the drift. That's just my 2 cents on it. I don't know if any of you have ever done any research on that. There we go. Michael did. I don't even know how to say that. Glyphosate destroys your microbiome. Yeah, I mean, I don't really fully understand all this stuff, but we will get some experts on probably Wealth webinar, to just talk about it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, and then you see all like the amount of plastics that's in our food and the stuff we ingest every day. And it really is, it's really interesting stuff. Who does a really good job of covering a lot of this is Joe Rogan's podcast, Rogan Experience.
He talks a lot about that.
He brings on a lot of really good experts, and they go in deep on a lot of that stuff. And so I'd recommend checking that out. So Chris, we just had a video sent in from one of our viewers.
Okay.
Actually, Shauna sent this over. So it's a 2-minute video. I have not watched it, but I'm going to go ahead and share it nonetheless, and we'll watch it together for the first time.
There we go.
So let me reset
Trying to
it.
get this thing turned the right way.
Through the World Economic Forum. One is called CEI, one is called ESG, one is called DEI. These initiatives are put down as social initiatives from the World Economic Forum, the most powerful people on the planet, through the banks to the big corporations. These corporations, unlike my business, actually depend on that financing 100%. So if they don't do the things that these 3 initiatives, the CEI, the ESG, and the DEI say, they actually lose their funding. So they can't operate their business. So you say, well, aren't these people smart enough to understand why they're destroying their business? They can't not do it, because if they don't do it, they won't get their funding. So they can't operate. So they have no choice but to do it. And then they drive their business into the dirt. And here's why that's happening. Because the people who run these companies, the officers of the companies, are not the founders of the companies. These are people that are many generations removed and many degrees of caring about the actual brand removed. All right. So these people are college graduates who think they know a whole bunch of stuff because they have an advanced degree, and they are making decisions that are, basically about the money, and thinking that eventually people will adopt this and it will stop. But it's not going to stop, and it's not supposed to stop. This is what people are failing to realize. What's happening is we are dealing with a communist insurgency that is undermining the values and the identity of the American public. What they are doing is they are intentionally creating a scenario where the American people rejecting this initiative is actually hurting iconic American brands that remove much of the American identity. So when you name these companies off, all of these companies represent America when you think of them traditionally. So now they're removing part of the identity, which is part of the communist process called demoralization. If there's less identity in America, there's less to fight for, which makes it easier to conquer. All right. Then on top of it, one of the goals of communism is to create two classes of people, very poor and very rich. And so what they're doing here is they are getting the American public to cancel their own companies that actually hurts their own neighbors who are good, hardworking American people. Because the people at Bud Light at the top are not the ones feeling the pain here. It's the delivery drivers. It's the hardworking red, white, and blue Americans that believe the same motherfucking shit that you all believe, who are getting fired or laid off or losing because of this. So they have run an operation to push this initiative down through the companies intentionally, where the companies cannot resist it because they're required to do so for their funding, knowing that the American people are going to reject it and destroy these companies, creating the lower class system that they're trying to create in the first place. There's 3 initiatives that are put down through the.
Yep.
Pretty well said.
But then, you know, just a second ago, I got to come to this one on TikTok. It's always TikTok, isn't it? Because it's not Instagram. Like, people on Instagram actually seem to like this, and YouTube seems to like this. But on Instagram, you know, in regards to when I was talking about the gut health and, you know, the pesticides and the problems with mental health, this is what someone took out of what I said. So please, like, Stephen, correct me if I was wrong in the way that I said that. But this is how one person on TikTok articulated what I said. Yes, I wish I had lived in the 1600s with war, disease, monarchies, etc. Such a better quality. Interesting, because I don't think I talked about any of that. I simply said in the past, 100 years ago, they didn't have these mental illnesses that they have today. Maybe they just didn't have a name for them. I mean, listen, I'm not a health expert, nor do I want to be, you know, but there's literally a connection and a link. And, you know, right there with that video, moving on to brands, I mean, it is pretty. Go ahead.
Sorry, I have friends in the education world, specifically in autism, and the new statistics just came out. 1 in 38 kids right now is being diagnosed with autism. Think about that. 1 in 38.
Sad.
And they don't know why.
Well, I'm sure
a lot of the stuff you're
why.
talking about is leading to a lot of that right now.
That's for sure. Dan on Facebook said, our private money club adjusting their loan rates this past year due to all the Fed rate hikes. So Dan, we don't set the rates in Private Money Club. It's an open community. It's lenders and borrowers. It's people with money that meet people that need money. Are the lenders in there, the private lenders in there, adjusting their rates with rates going up? Yeah, I've seen rates go from, you know, when we first started Private Money Club 3 years ago, I would say you could find, you know, a lot of borrowers on there willing to pay 10, you know, maybe 12% was on the high side, and they were getting funded. Today, it's very difficult for a 10% to get funded. Well, so yes, rates have pushed up within, you know, what the borrowers are willing to pay for money. They're willing to pay more because it costs more to go to the bank, and lenders are less willing to lend it lower than, I would say, that the bottom would be 12%. That's what I'm seeing. So,
yeah. Well, here's the beautiful thing about private money clubs is it's a truly market driven community. It's literally these loans on properties, and the borrowing of these loans is set by 2 individuals. So me and Chris has money. I need money to do a real estate transaction. It's whatever we decide on. And here's what's interesting is you would think that as the bank rates rise, as the federal funds rates rise, that private money rates would rise as well, but not necessarily, because you always have to look at the alternative. So me as a lender, if I'm lending money, that means I'm investing, trying to grow my wealth. At the end of the day, that's what I'm doing. And so if I look at, I lend my money to Chris and my money's backed by a piece of property that's worth more than I'm lending him, and he's got a solid track record of paying back and not defaulting and knowing what he's doing to make money on these deals, where's my risk in that? Alternatively speaking, if I take that same money and I go throw it in the stock market right now, where's my risk on investing in the stock market right now? I would argue it's very, very high. I can see the stock market taking drastic drops this coming year, right now this year. And so alternatively, if I'm not lending at 10, 12%, where am I putting my money? Remember, it can't sit right now because inflation is still above 5%, over 2.5 times what the Federal Reserve's goal of 2% annual inflation is. So it's still being eroded right now. I can't just throw it in the stock market. It's very volatile, very risky. And I mean, even treasury yields and stuff right now are falling like a rock. And so where do I put my money? So if I can safely lend it to Chris at even 10%, still that makes a lot more sense than just throwing in some of these other alternatives right now. So it's kind of interesting to watch it play out where it's not really correlating the rise because the alternatives don't exist right now. But that's kind of what I've seen.
That's very true. And somebody over here on Instagram just said, that correction, the one that you were just talking about, is going to be brutal, and couldn't. I don't disagree at all. We haven't seen the third leg down. If you really follow cycles and patterns in the markets, it usually comes in waves of 3, sometimes 4. Then they call them legs, and it's based on a lot of different things. But I'll just keep it simple, like a floor and a ceiling, a support and a resistance. And what you've been seeing is that tightening. Okay, the range has been tightening, so now you've got a lot less variable. So really, this right now with this debt ceiling stuff is pushing the markets lower. Now, I'm sure they're going to push past the debt ceiling. Then you might see more manipulation in the markets, and it might test the highs again. But we're not going to see new highs, folks. And I don't care if you listen to Kramer, and he's saying it's going to go up. Just for the record, Kramer's got one of the worst track histories, period. So whatever Kramer says, you'd be much better off doing the complete opposite if you want to actually make money. Hey, if you're looking for tax write-offs and you want losses, then do everything Kramer says. You're going to have all sorts of tax write-offs, because you're going to have losses. But I just think that, we really got to understand that, like, these times we're going into right now are going to be very difficult. And it's not going to happen quickly, and it's not going to maybe happen tomorrow, because you got unemployment numbers which still need to go up. Unemployment needs to go up before we really are going to feel the impact. Because while everybody's still employed, they're out, the TikTok, a lot of the TikTok folks like Michael are out drinking Bud Light and searching around for those special cans that no longer exist that are destroying that brand. I'm just messing with you, Michael. But hey, I got to pick on somebody the whole time. They're just going to be out spending money. I mean, I was traveling over the weekend. The airports were packed. The flights were packed. The restaurants were packed. And that doesn't happen when people aren't employed. So that's something we got to look at. Let me just hit a couple other things here, Stephen. American Airlines. Now, I don't know how many of you fly American Airlines, but I hate the airline. On occasion, I will fly them because they got the only flight that I need. But American Airlines raises profit forecasts thanks to stronger demand and cheaper fuel. So, right there, you're seeing profit forecasts in airlines go up. I think that's a mistake, but I'm not the expert. They know far more than me. I think the demand will give way once, things really kick in. Another thing here that kind of supports a little bit more of what we were just saying is mortgage demand drops to the lowest level in 3 months. And that's a direct correlation back to the interest rates and also the supply and demand issues. You got people that have the housing stock. They don't want to sell for less, so they're holding and not selling. And you got the buyers, which can't afford to pay the price because interest rates are higher, right? And that's the demand is going down. So as demand goes down for the buyers being able to afford the housing stock, eventually the pendulum has to swing and the housing stock price has to come down to meet the buyer's need and actually what they can afford. Right there. That's the article I was referring to.
Yeah, I mean, rates just increased from 6.69% last week to 6.91% on average for a 30-year fixed mortgage. Conforming loan balance. Applications for mortgages to purchase homes dropped 3% for the week, and we're down 31% from the same week 1 year ago.
Interesting. Here's a funny. This should get you all laughing. So I don't know how many of you follow New Jersey or New York governors, but they basically suck. There's no other word to put to it. But right here, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie to launch presidential campaign next week. Great. More shit politicians entering the race. Good grief. What is that going to mean? And then you got a little thing here. AI poses human extinction risk on par with nuclear war. This is an interesting thing and something you've been hearing a lot of with AI. I mean, AI is helping, us do a lot of things better. But if it's not controlled, and the people that created AI also gave these warnings. Elon has given these warnings that, if AI is not controlled, it could get out of control. And if any of you have watched Terminator 2, then you'd remember Skynet. I mean, it's a very scary thing. It really is. It has the ability to exceed our levels of knowledge because, I'm not going to go into that, but it's a pretty scary thing. I don't know how everybody feels about AI. I know most of you are using AI, but what are your thoughts of this post right here? AI poses human extinction risk. I don't know. It's a frightening thought.
Well, those people, I mean, the Sam Altman, the CEO of ChatGPT, all of Google's executives, Elon Musk, these people are a lot smarter than you and I, Chris, when it comes to things like this. And if they're signing off on statements warning that AI poses more of a risk than nuclear war, that's something we should definitely be paying attention to. That's all I know.
I agree. Let's see. Well, Elizabeth Holmes, for any of you that followed that back when, she was doing her big, whatever you call it, we'll call it a sham, reports to prison. So she is going to prison. Well, hey, if you do that, what she did, you probably should go to prison. Let's see. Firms mismanaging climate risk.
Yeah, I mean, here's a good one, Chris. I'll put up real fast. So saying follow the money, but this is just an interesting chart right here. So if you look on the screen, the gold line are lending standards by banks. Okay, so how the banks, rate loans and lending. So you can see in past recessions, and the red line is the GDP change, quarterly change in the country. So if we look at past recessions back in the early 2000s, we had lending standards going way up while GDP was dropping on a quarterly basis. Back in 2008, we had lending standards shoot up over this period of time, GDP falling. And of course, that was the 08 recession that went on for many, many years. You can see COVID, we had all kinds of craziness, so you can't really use that. But you can see where we are today now in 2023. Lending standards are shooting up stronger than they have almost ever in history, while we all know GDP is staying flat and falling right now. So if we just play this out, it looks like we're leading towards a pretty strong recession.
What do you think, Cash? You think we're going to have a recession? We haven't asked you anything recently. Oh, really? You're just not going to answer that question? You're going to put your ears back and just say, yes, we're in a recession already. Why would you ask me such a stupid question? See, cats are pretty smart, because they already know we're in a recession, and there's not a darn thing anyone can say that can prove that one to be the different way, except for politicians that are trying to get votes. Gosh, how do I forget things? Oh, let's see.
Also to note, over on the left side of this screen, a lot of red this morning.
Oh yeah, the markets are down heavily. 283 down right now. Yeah, no, it's advanced auto shares plummeted today. Nvidia, now that's an interesting one. Nvidia shot up, and I bet you any money, Stephen, that a whole bunch of people rushed in and bought Nvidia when it spiked up. Like, I bet you they bought it there. Like, that would have been the worst time to buy Nvidia. Like, there's no way it'll hold. It just maybe, but I wouldn't buy it. But people love buying FOMO. They think they're missing out on something. They love buying on emotion. I literally have changed everything that I do when it comes to investing. I invest solely on logic, and I do a lot of research. Probably could even do more, but I have other people on my team that even go a different direction. So I might do my due diligence this way, but then I got someone else on my other team, like Stephen and his cousin just did, and they might do the due diligence 1 degree to the left and find something else that then I have to then go in and say, oh, well, I never thought about that. That's the interesting thing. You're always learning. But if you invest based on logic and not on emotions, and if you don't chase greedy, like big returns, and you just go with the slow and steady, you're always going to be a lot better off. We're going to talk about this a lot on our 3-day training this weekend. So folks, if any of you are interested in joining us, the 3-day training starts Friday. It goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It is our keystone event. It is our main event that we do. It's heavily attended. Every single time we do it, it's different because we base it on what's going on currently. So we're going to talk a lot about emotion versus logical investing. We're going to talk about how you can do your due diligence on investments. We've got some speakers coming on we've never had before, and we're going to really, really go deep into that. And if you can't make it Friday, Saturday, Sunday, no problem. It's all recorded. Then we go through and we have our editors edit it down and timestamp it. So folks, join us for that. Tickets are $297, and yeah, let's give a discount code. So we'll put it up in the chat right now. We've got a discount code that'll take it down $100. So you can get in for $197 for this weekend's 3-day training, and you can learn something. Michael, you're not invited. Sorry, buddy. But I don't want folks like you on our training because you don't deserve it. Number two, you're not going to do anything with it. You're just going to blame everybody else for your problems in your life. So, Michael, sorry, buddy, you are not invited. Not that you'd buy a ticket anyway because you're broke. Anyway, Stephen, what else do we got before we wrap up today's show? We had some great comments coming in here from Instagram. I really enjoy the Instagram stuff coming in. It's phenomenal. Let's see. This is interesting. Let's get ready for Agenda 2030, where the elites have control of entire humanity. It does seem that it's going that way, like the World Forum and those things. It does seem like that's kind of the direction we're going. They're trying to control every single thing, and the digital currency will allow them to do that. FedNow, is it this month, Stephen, that FedNow launches? When does FedNow launch? Do you remember? I just did a YouTube on this, but I don't remember the date.
I'll tell you in a second.
Yeah, I think it's June or July, or it's one of those two. Someone probably knows.
July, yeah, announces July launch.
July, yeah, July. So you'll have FedNow launching in July, and there's nothing we can do to change that. But yeah, it's interesting. Just a lot of stuff going on right now, folks. So I appreciate all of you joining us for WTF, and I hope you all join us for this afternoon's Wealth webinar at 1 p.m. Eastern. So, all of you on Instagram, some of you on TikTok, not many because all of you already know everything, but not all of you, but some of you on TikTok, like Michael, know everything. But I know for a fact my Facebook and YouTube folks will join us. So we'll see you all at 1 o'clock. And then this afternoon, later, we've got our 4:30 Ask Me Anything event.
And to close the show before we end, I just got to say, get ready for some awesome sports starting tomorrow. We finally got the Stanley Cup set up and ready to go. I believe it kicks off Saturday night with the Florida Panthers, baby, against the Las Vegas Golden Knights. So looking forward to a fun hockey Stanley Cup series coming up. And then we got the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals, finally taking out the Boston Celtics in Game 7. So they'll be taking on the Denver Nuggets, and I believe that kicks off either tomorrow or Friday evening. So looking forward to a couple fun championship series in basketball and hockey. And then, of course, the Republican primaries are already off to a hot and heated start with Ron DeSantis launching his presidential campaign this last week. And him and Trump are already going at it like brawlers in a WWE arena. So that should be interesting to watch coming up. But that's it for the show. So, Chris, take it home.
I love it. Well, Joey_Jojo, thanks for joining us on TikTok. Everybody over here on Facebook and YouTube, thank you for joining us, and all of you on Instagram. Stay tuned. Lots more coming. We will see you this afternoon. Till then, enjoy your day.